Okay, we are going to talk about the UVM Digital Accessibility Roadmap. It is June of 2026, and it's time to talk about where the rubber meets the road, by which I mean we're going to talk about how you can get started preparing for implementing the Digital Accessibility Roadmap within your units. This presentation is geared for campus communicators, specifically those working at the college and unit level, to help them get prepared for making inroads on the digital accessibility roadmap. Why now and why you? So, digital accessibility is a civil rights requirement under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and UVM is working toward operational readiness by April of 2027. And college communicators play a critical role because you all create and manage so much of the university's public facing digital content. Now, the goal with UVM's digital accessibility roadmap is progress, prioritization, and sustainable improvement, not perfection on day one. We are encouraging you to think of this as a process, an iterative process rather than a one and done procedure. So, here's how we're going to break this down for college communicators. There are four sections of the roadmap. The roadmap uses the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines' own institutional model of accessibility maturity, which has four components to it: auditing, education, remediation, and sustainability. And those are the steps we encourage you to organize your content around. So, first up, we want you to create an inventory of what your college publishes and who is the owner or contact person for each piece. This is a crucial step in any audit. Know what you're trying to measure. So, for each of the colleges or organizations at the University of Vermont, go ahead and make a list of what website or websites your organization manages. At minimum, you're probably going to have a Drupal website as well as potentially one or more external websites, including WordPress sites that are either centrally managed or independently managed. You want to try to assemble an inventory of all of your electronic documents, focusing on those that are evergreen, those that are continually updated. This may be a good time to think about which documents you don't need to hang on to. This will make things simpler. This will cut down on the amount of work that you have to do when it comes to remediation. You want to inventory your social media accounts. You want to inventory what you are producing in terms of multimedia. That is, what videos are you making? What podcasts do you host? What about your email newsletters? We are assuming that everyone is using the Emma client for newsletter production at the University of Vermont right now. Have a look around and make sure you know all of the different newsletters that your department is sending out. And you want to look at your reports. Are you putting out fact sheets, data reports, annual reports, reports to the legislature? All of those, track them down and make a list. And then finally, you want to look at what you're doing in terms of outreach with digital signage and kiosks. And then once you have an inventory, you're going to take a first pass through your materials to actually assess their accessibility. Let's go through the types of materials one by one. At this point in time, it's June 2026. We are asking you to hold off on automated accessibility checking for your website. We will have a site improve accessibility checker being rolled out and or another tool alongside it to go with the Drupal existing accessibility checks. There will be more on that in July of 2026, so stay tuned there. For manual checking, you are going to want to download and install the TPGI Color Contrast Analyzer. That is what the Office of Accessibility Services recommends for examining your color contrast for all of your items, but it's especially helpful for looking at websites. Color contrast is difficult to measure with automated tools, so you are going to want to set this up manually. We will also be sharing a website accessibility checklist later on in the month, so keep an eye out for that. You can also schedule an Office of Accessibility Services website accessibility audit, and we're happy to help you understand more about what is already done in terms of the accessibility of your website and what still remains to do. If you are managing your website through UVM's Drupal installation, the vast majority of the web content accessibility guidelines, the WCAG guidelines, are being taken care of by the UVM digital team through that central installation, but there is still going to be items that you want to particularly keep an eye out for. Let's look at your documents. As you are going through your documents, make sure to run the Microsoft Accessibility Assistant for Word, PowerPoint, and Excel documents. For PDFs, you are going to want to get hold of a copy of Adobe Acrobat Pro if you do not already have it, and that has an automated accessibility checker for PDFs in it. Again, for the manual checking, even if you're using Adobe Acrobat Pro, you're also going to want to download and install the TPGI Color Contrast Analyzer. It is available for Mac and Windows. It is free. Let someone know using the Footprint system if you need permissions to install software. You're also going to want to do a manual review of your alt text to make sure that meaningful images have meaningful alt text and decorative images are marked decorative. There is an Office of Accessibility Services accessible document checklist that is available on our website. We highly recommend that you use that to work through the manual components of document accessibility. For social media, start taking a look at the content on your social media channels. You're looking at color contrast. You are looking to make sure that you're using a link shortener, that your links are making sense in terms of being readable by a screen reader. And again, you're looking at that alt text. For multimedia, the only thing you can do is to review manually at this point in time at the University of Vermont. So you're looking to make sure that all your videos have closed captions, either automated or edited. Edited preferred, automated, we're getting there. If you are creating highlight reels or any videos that don't have spoken dialogue, you also want to check to see whether they need audio description. That is something the Office of Accessibility Services can provide for you for free. You're going to want to check to make sure that if you are using images of text on screen or any unvoiced text on screen for your videos, that that text appears in the text transcript below, or it is voiced in the narration for images of text. And then you want to check that all of your audio files have text transcripts. For email newsletters, Office of Accessibility Services maintains a UVM email newsletter accessibility standards webpage. These standards are also available in the website for content creators at the college level that is maintained by Stratcom. For your reports, you're going to want to go through using Adobe Acrobat Pro to see how accessible those PDFs are, unless your reports are on the website, in which case you'd use the website protocol. And again, manual accessibility checking, it's really going to come down to color contrast, review of alt text, and you also want to take a look at your reading order. New this year for digital signage, we have a list of UVM accessible digital signage standards that you can double check your upcoming plans for digital signage on campus against to make sure that they are meeting those requirements. Next up, you want to come up with a plan, and you are going to need to rope in your college leadership in order to answer the following questions. Question 1. How close are we to full conformance with WCAG 2.1 AA level standards for all our communications materials? Question 2. What do we need to achieve and in which areas? You can also frame this as with which materials. Question 3. What do we need in order to accomplish that work? Do we have everything we need? And to what extent will we need support from OAS and the other campus units? And finally, question 4. Do students, potential students, staff, faculty, and collaborators currently know our organization for the quality of our digital accessibility and our culture of disability inclusion? It is a big question, but we're going to come back to it later. It's also very much a driving question for this accessibility work at the University of Vermont. Next up, we're going to go to the second of the 4 areas, and that is education. Again, start by creating an inventory. For your organization, determine what your college expectations are for digital accessibility knowledge. What does your college leadership expect communicators, administrators, and leaders to know about digital accessibility? So if you're a communicator, you're a content creator, and the expectation around what you need to know for digital accessibility might be different than, for instance, your financial manager, who will need to know a lot about the accessibility of spreadsheets and what to look for in evaluating accessible software, but those might not fall within your particular job set. So get some input from college leadership as to what the college-wide expectations are for digital accessibility knowledge. Next, figure out who in the college currently has any digital accessibility knowledge. Again, you're looking between communicators, administrators, and leadership. How close is everyone to meeting the expectations your college is setting for digital accessibility knowledge? And which level would each person say they are at? Beginner, intermediate, fluent, or expert? And then map each person to the kind of materials they work on. You just spent some time creating an inventory of communications materials, and now you want to see who is responsible for each of those materials and what they know or what they might need to know. Work with your college leadership to determine what are the college's expectations for digital accessibility knowledge moving forward. Does anything need to move up in terms of applying additional education to people within your college? Education really take a levels approach here. Not everyone needs to become a digital accessibility expert, but everyone should understand basic accessibility principles. Content creators should know how to create accessible content across the different medium types. And then a smaller number of individuals in your organization can serve as local accessibility champions. We know some departments are asking one person to be the PDF remediation point person, to go back through all the PDFs and make them all accessible. Another person is, doing the teach the teacher method. So learning enough about a particular area of digital accessibility so they can turn around and teach everyone else in their area that information. These are both valid approaches. Your college may come up with a third entirely valid approach. We just want you to start having these conversations around education and knowing who needs to do what. Let's talk about remediation. Again, right back to the inventory stage. Work with your college leadership to determine which items in your college's communications portfolio need remediation. Is it your website? How much remediation does your website need? Which of your electronic documents are you keeping and what do they need doing to them? Your social media accounts are in a quite fortunate gray area. The rules of the revised Title II guidelines specify that social media account archives do not need remediation. This is a true story. Up until April of 2027, all of your social media posts do not need remediation. You can simply consider them over and done with. So for social media, you're really focused more on education and making sure that whoever is going to be creating the social media content moving forward knows how to do so in an accessible manner. Not the same for multimedia. So your YouTube channel does not count as a social media account. It counts as multimedia. We are going to ask you to remediate the archive of videos on your channel. Figure out what needs doing on your channel. And I know this is a big lift for some of our college communicators because some of those channels have thousands of videos on them. If you're publishing a podcast, does your podcast have a text transcript for every episode? With your email newsletters, if the archives are online, you are going to need to figure out a way to remediate those archives or pull them down. For reports, you're going to need to make sure that those report documents are available in an accessible format. So if you have annual reports that you have stored up on your website, you are going to need to go through those documents to make sure that they are fully accessible or replace them with accessible versions. And again, for digital signage and kiosks, because digital signage is more ephemeral, more temporary as a form of communication, there's going to be less for you to go back and remediate. Pretty difficult to remediate something that disappears after a certain time. But if you are reusing templates for digital signage, look at your templates. Are your templates accessible? Are you making sure that any animation you choose to use with the digital sign is slow and steady, only has that fade in, fade out animation? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the Office of Accessibility Services website and look up the digital signage accessibility standards. As you are figuring out what needs to be fixed, determine who is going to be doing the fixing. You want to set April 2027 as your target deadline for getting as much of this work done as possible. Okay, assess your remediation needs. After you crosswalk the items that need remediation with both who has the knowledge to do the remediation, plus who is actually in charge of doing the work, come up with a plan. This is a big undertaking for the university and for you and your college. Make a solid project plan to get it done. You cannot simply eat an elephant by unhinging your jaw and launching yourself face first at the elephant. You're going to need to eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's what a project plan is going to allow you to do. Your project plan may need to include a timeline, milestones, identifying responsible parties, what kind of support is available to you internally in your organization, and then across the campus, and potentially outside of the campus if you feel like you're going to need to bring in external remediators or if you're currently working with external vendors. What funding do you have in order to make this possible? Is it funding in the form of ready labor? Is it funding to bring in additional labor? Is it funding to bring in a third-party remediator? What does the funding picture look like there? And then build in some emergency cords. If, for instance, your organization finds itself the recipient of a sudden surprise multi-million dollar grant that must be implemented by October of this year, obviously you're going to drop a lot of this current work in order to focus on that amazing new mitzvah. Well, in order to do that, you're also going to need to keep doing the remediation. So that would be where you want to have kind of a backup plan in place. Resist the freak out. This is a lot. It's not just you feeling overwhelmed. It is a lot of work to do. So here's how you can make this a little bit more manageable. Prioritize high traffic and high impact content first. Focus on your most current and your most actively used materials before older content. And build accessibility into future workflows so that you're not creating additional materials you're just going to have to remediate. If you focus on creating accessible work now, you're not going to have to go back and do more work later. Again, the goal here is progress, prioritization, and sustainable iterative improvement, not perfection on day one. Keep taking bites out of that elephant. Tiny bites. Stand up and stretch between bites. Go outside, touch the grass, take some vacation, come back, take another couple bites. Let's talk more about sustainability. Again, what are we starting with? That's right, an inventory. Take an inventory and figure out how does digital accessibility show up in your college or organization's strategic plan. For almost every strategic plan on this campus, digital accessibility shows up aspirationally. It's mentioned as something that we want to focus on. That's fantastic. But now, how is that going to work practically? What are the practical steps for putting digital accessibility in place as your strategic plan comes to life? How are you going to measure what needs to be done and what does actually get done in terms of digital accessibility? What are your digital accessibility deliverables? And how do you make those a reality? How do you make them attainable, reasonable, and a reality? In terms of making accessibility sustainable, you're probably going to want to renovate your existing workflows. Think of incorporating accessibility into any onboarding you do for staff. Make sure staff understand that it is a new requirement at UVM. Include accessibility in your communication workflows. Build accessibility review into publication processes. This means when you set out to publish a large piece like an annual report or a data sheet, build in time for an accessibility review. If you are bringing in an external designer, an external vendor to do some work for you, build an accessibility review into their timeline, build an accessibility review into their scope of work. Fund enough scope of work to encompass an accessibility review for this person. And identify ongoing ownership and accountability for each piece. So you know if you want to come back in a year's time and say, hey, this needs a little polishing in terms of accessibility, you know who to go to. Okay. Part of sustainability is just the iteration, right? We're coming back up to auditing, and that's why we want to make sure that we are returning to some of the questions you asked your college leadership earlier in this presentation. When we have this conversation in April of 2027, how will your college or organization answer the following questions? How close are we to full conformance with WCAG 2.1 AA level standards for all our communications materials? What have we achieved and in which areas? What work remains for us to accomplish in FY28 and beyond? What resources do we need to accomplish that work? And I did mention this question is going to come up. It is, again, is a foundational question for UVM. Do students, potential students, staff, faculty, and collaborators know your organization for the quality of your digital accessibility and your culture of disability inclusion? Why or why not? You can also find out more about how the Office of Accessibility Services can help. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can get digital accessibility resources at UVM's new Accessibility Hub website. We have one central location for all accessibility materials on the campus. And you can also meet with someone from the Office of Accessibility Services to explain your concerns in greater detail or just get additional answers. Office of Accessibility Services can help with website accessibility audits. We can provide guidance on document accessibility. We can look at your remediation plans and help you fine tune them. We can help you come up with a remediation plan. We can provide accessibility standards and checklists, and we can answer your questions about prioritization and compliance expectations at the university. So, thank you for your time in watching and or listening to this presentation. You can find out more about the Office of Accessibility Services by visiting go.uvm.edu/accessibility. And hey, good luck out there.